Hey everyone, this video is coming out a little later than I wanted, but better late than never I guess. Shortly after Xianyun's release, I quickly leveled her as much as I could and went to test a lot of team comps with and without her against the PMA in the old Abyss floor 12 since I knew that once the new Abyss released, it would be much harder to test teams without an easy to access target dummy. So this video will showcase the various teams I tested, comparing their performance with and without Xianyun. And at the end, I'll give my personal thoughts about Xianyun's performance in those teams, as well as my conclusions about her as a character overall. Just a few important notes to remember before we begin. First, a team seemingly clearing faster than another doesn't necessarily mean a team with or without Xianyun is better than the other. There are many factors involved, including just differences in my own play, boss AI, and different character investment. So don't just use this comparison video as strict proof of strength ranking, but just as another example for you to see how a team is played with Xianyun versus without. Second, the Xianyun used in this testing was only level 70 because that's all the materials I could get like day one. My Xianyun right now is at level 90 and the level 71 is missing like 300 attack in comparison. So this is definitely not her full potential, but perhaps this will be a better representation of a low to mid investment Xianyun. And lastly, there are so many other teams I didn't test and try. I'm free to play, so I don't have every character in the game. For instance, I don't have Risley, so I couldn't test them, sorry. I also wanted to focus on Xianyun's most common teams that people talk about, but there are so many other teams you could play with her. If you want to see more team testing like that, I highly suggest watching Suggest videos on Xianyun. What I appreciate about his TC the most is that he comes up with and tests pretty wacky team combos that may seem weird, but they actually turn out to work. So with that, here's the gameplay. So here are my quick thoughts on each of the comparisons based on how I felt playing the teams. Diluc had the biggest glow up with Xianyun to me. Just playing Diluc normally feels like a slog where it's more of a team trying to carry him across the finish line, and the damage still is lacking. Being able to just plunge with Diluc was one of the most fun things I've ever had in combat in like much recent time, and it really surprised me how enjoyable and how good the damage was. As my first 5-star that I got from the beginner banner, I'm really glad that Xianyun is able to push his teams to another level. Gaming is a little similar to Diluc's scenario. It feels much better playing him with Xianyun than without, and especially with C6 Bennett where you can alternate a normal and a skill plunge, making his plunge gameplay a bit more unique. I don't really think about chasing Manchai, which is probably incorrect, but I'm too lazy to do that. I think the biggest downside is knowing that C6 Gaming is a significant boost to his damage, and playing him at C3, I can definitely tell that his damage is taking a hit. So knowing that I'm not playing him at his full potential feels a little bad. But focusing back on Xianyun, yeah, she's pretty good with him. For Hu Tao, before Xianyun, I personally really didn't like playing the normal double Hydro version with or without Furina. The jump cancels at C0 don't feel really good to play, and I find that I still run out of stamina doing those cancels. Probably skill issue, but that's just how I feel, and it really makes me not want to play Hu Tao. But with Xianyun, C0 Hu Tao feels so much better to play with the ability to charge attack, cancel over jump, and go into a plunge attack. Great damage when everything vapes, and I still have a half a stamina bar at the end of the rotation. With Xianyun and Furina, I actually want to play Hu Tao now. And comparing Furina Xingqiu versus Furina Yelan, yes, I know Xingqiu will give more consistent vapes, but Yelan also has that damage bonus that she gives, so I feel like either or is perfectly fine. Now for you C1 Hu Tao havers, you definitely won't feel this benefit, so in that case you don't get as much value with Xianyun, and the damage difference is pretty insignificant. With Xiao, I think the difference in my clear speeds were pretty similar. The biggest difference would just be no circle impact with Bennett's buff, which is a pretty good upside in my opinion, and also better sustain if you're using Furina. You will definitely get bigger plunge numbers with Xianyun even without the ability to vape or melt plunges, but overall I don't think that there was a huge difference in performance for me. Still, the comparison is with Bennett, who is a really strong character, so it's great to see Xianyun being as strong of an option and even stronger at more investment. Alhaitham I reluctantly tested since I saw some comments about it. The Xianyun version did actually clear much faster than I expected, but I feel like it's more of my Nahida Alhaitham core just being really strong on their own rather than Xianyun actually doing anything. Sure, the team works, but I still don't see a reason using her over a normal spread team or slotting in a Hydro unit for a double Dendro Hyperbloom team, which will just be stronger. Plunging Yai was another surprise to me in how effective the team actually was. Aggravate is additive damage, so it doesn't really benefit the plunge damage as much as Vape or Melt, but still the team cleared faster in single target than the Kazuha version, and I think the main reason for this is the ability to slot in Fischl while maintaining Nahida, which really elevates the single target damage. With Kazuha, obviously it would be better when there's multiple mobs, but in terms of single target, if you want to slot in Fischl and keep Kazuha, you'll have to either play healerless or use Baiju, which is fine, but he's no Nahida. So yeah, Xianyun is actually pretty good with Yai. I'm combining my thoughts on Raiden and Neuvillette teams with Xianyun together. The plunge damage buff doesn't work on Raiden burst, and I'm not plunging on Neuvillette while I'm using his Hydro Pump. So both these team showcases just serve as an example of how Jean and Xianyun serve the same role in the team, and both are perfectly fine. They clear pretty much at the same time. So in these teams, Xianyun is not really an upgrade, but like I said before, if you don't have Jean, then you can just use Xianyun in the slot just fine. Last team is Navia, and I will admit, after looking back at my gameplay, I played pretty badly with the Xianyun version. For instance, just missing a Navia skill on the boss. Part of it was me just having to come up with a rotation on the fly, so the gameplay was definitely not optimal. Still, the normal double pyro version is more intuitive and simple to play in my opinion, and also feels like I have more chances and time to battery my Shangling and make sure she actually has a burst up for the second rotation. Thus, I do think Xianyun has better use cases than with Navia. However, I did recently try to play another Navia team with Xianyun, which forgets about the double pyro core and just slots in the Furina Xianyun combo, keeping Zhongli. And this team actually felt pretty good to play. You just set everything up on your supports, and once you're on Navia, you hold skill, fit into plunges, and repeat. So you can do 4 plunges each rotation. Definitely more of a brute force team, but if you want to play Xianyun with Navia, I highly suggest trying this team out, which does a pretty good amount of team DPS both practically and according to the sheets. So with all my thoughts on the teams out of the way, I'll leave you with my short post-release conclusions on Xianyun. If you just detest plunge gameplay, then stay away from this character, this will be the worst character in the game for you. But if you're indifferent to it or like it, then Xianyun is a pretty strong character if you have Furina as well. Her plunge buff is really good in terms of damage, and if you're willing to play around it, her teams will do a solid amount of damage. And I think the coolest thing is that if you have Xianyun, Furina, and C6 Bennett, the last slot can be pretty much any character you want, and the team will likely be good enough to clear Abyss with just Pyro Plunges vaping. It's nice to see Xianyun create and enable a new team archetype into the game, plunging teams that actually perform pretty well. And with the right teammates, it can work with a lot of characters, making her a pretty flexible character. Now, I did say she's strong with Furina, so if you don't have Furina, she definitely loses a lot of her power. To a lesser extent, Bennett C6 is needed as well, but I think it's mainly Furina that's really needed to fully utilize Xianyun's strength. This is somewhat of a hit on her overall evaluation of a character, but if you're someone who does somewhat pull for meta, then you should probably already own or should pull for Furina. In my meta evaluation of Xianyun I posted before her release, I concluded that she would be a character with an above average pull value. And I still think this is the case. She's definitely not a must pull, nor is she extremely weak or very niche. With the right pieces, she is a very versatile character that can raise many teams' damage ceilings solely with the plunge buff, while also bringing teams a lot of comfort with her healing. And lastly, in terms of exploration, Xianyun is much better than I originally expected. I thought her lack of verticality in her jumps would hinder her exploration, and that Wander and Yelan, who I think are the best for exploration, would still be better, but Xianyun's horizontal movement is at the same level as Wander and Yelan, so just having chew up any of them are amazing for movement. So ultimately, because of these reasons, I'm really happy having Xianyun on my free-to-play account, and will likely be using her very often both in Abyss and in Exploration. That's everything I wanted to cover about Xianyun. Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section, like and subscribe if you enjoyed these types of videos, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.